Namaskar, Namaskaram, Sat Sri Akal, Namaskar. Friends, I'm here today to take you one step forward from the written exams that you did recently. And I'm sure all of you are looking forward to do very well in your interviews. And in today's lecture, I would like to orient you to some of the aspects of the interview in which certain types of questions may come up to you and how you can enable yourself, prepare yourself to tackle those questions. I think we will start with something related to a cultural heritage. Because we all been hearing a lot about culture in the last, almost a year. With the COVID coming in, everybody is talking about a new normal. And in this new normal, people are actually reconnecting with their roots in so many aspects. So I think let's go ahead and tackle some specific type of issues that may come up in the interview. For instance, what is the importance, what is the significance of conserving and maintaining our museums, our places of heritage, or generally our cultural heritage? Why it is important that we should be aware of this? And as I just said, that there is recently a talk about culture, but please go back to your own families, go back to your own places, and you will realize that there are certain aspects about our life beyond our daily life that give us pleasure and enrich our knowledge and make us a complete person. Culture makes us a complete person. Culture is as in not only just our way we talk, that is our culture, the way we do certain things is our culture, but also what we know about our heritage. And that is why it's very important that we connect with our museums, we connect with our places of archaeological interest, we connect with our places of historical interest, and we connect with our places of spiritual interest. And I'm sure each of you who may be from any part of India will be very much aware that in each area, there are places which go back deep in roots in our cultural heritage. And why should we not know about them? It is possible that the board of people sitting there will ask you some question related to what is your place of interest? What is the most important place in your area related to culture? Say, for instance, if you are from Kolkata. If you are from the east part of the country, the oldest museum that was established in our country, the Indian Museum, which is on Chaurangi Road. Would you know about that? What all is over there? There is a mummy over there. There are so many aspects of cultural heritage that are preserved over there, which completed 200 years recently, just a few years ago. Same way, if you are from the north in India, you would be knowing about the National Museum. Now, both these museums, they come under the Ministry of Culture. And likewise, in every state, in every part of the country, there are museums which are talking not only about the cultural heritage, that is the findings from archaeology or the different art forms or the different types of artworks as in, stone statues or brass statues, etc. Even the point of what was the type of jewelry at a particular time. Then there are museums that are linked to warfare. There are museums linked to textiles. There are museums that are linked to folk traditions. And so I think when we come to know about all these things, unless they are preserved, unless there is a museum to it, there is a darshan. In Hindi, we call it darshan, that we are visibly seeing the display of these items connects us to a past, connects us to our civilizational growth. And I think that is the important part of knowing our cultural heritage. And so as per what is there in your area, you do a little recce, you do some sort of a net surfing, or maybe I'm sure that most of you from your family members, from your teachers can find out what are the important places, which are the important museums, which are the important locations, which have a historical, like places linked to maybe Rabindranath Tagore, places linked to Subhash Chandra Bose, places linked to Sardar Patel, places linked to Prithviraj Chauhan, and so different periods of history have been preserved in these museums, and so it's very important that I think we have a general view of the importance of these museums, because this knowledge connects us in a non-verbal way. See, when you read a book, you get connected in a verbal way. It's a written communication and you visualize. But when you actually see something that you have read about, your connectivity becomes very, very critical. Just like when you read about somebody, but you meet that person in reality, your knowledge becomes more. So I think it is very important for us to have these museums, for us to have these places preserved. And that is why the Archaeological Survey of India, you will notice that important places linked to Indian heritage, the places linked to the epics, that is the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, the places linked to different periods of Buddha, the places linked to Kushan period, and the Havelis of different, kings, etc. They've all been preserved as national monuments, places of national heritage. ASI has almost 43 places all over India of national heritage. Likewise, there are places in the world. And so it is very important for us to connect with them, know about it, because that connects us to our real self, to our real. We are just not today's human beings, we are human beings that have traversed through time. And today we need to know about the past so that we can do, our present can be better. We can explain and contribute in a better way to preserve the past for a better future. One must have a very, very sort of a generalized and a very comprehensive also view of what is our cultural heritage, what are the different aspects of our cultural heritage, and also specifically to your area from where you come. Because when you are answering a question, when you are facing an interviewer, he may be interested to know how much you know about the cultural aspects or the historical aspects of your own location. Which are the places you may have visited, which are the places that have impressed you or that have made you more aware about India's cultural wealth, the richness of our nation. So if you are from Odisha, I think the Jagannath temple attracts you. If you're from, say, Uttarakhand, then maybe Rishikesh attracts you. And likewise, if you're from Bihar, maybe the Nalanda University may be of interest to you. So whichever part of the nation you are from, it would be very important for you to have a bird's eye view of what are the important places and try and see which interests you. And then if you're able to answer that question, that this is a place of interest, I like this place for XYZ's reason. Maybe you like Nalanda. Suppose you want to talk about Nalanda. You like Nalanda because it was a storehouse of knowledge. You like the Jagannath temple because of its architecture and because of its connectivity to a very important part of India's heritage, and that is the only temple in the world which has sisters and brothers sitting there. One sister Subhadra and Balram and Krishna over there. Likewise, if you're talking about, say, Kashi, then of course Kashi Vishwanath and Ganga. So these are different aspects. So when you connect to your places of important historical and cultural value, try to get some knowledge about them so that you can speak a few lines about it and what it is about it that interests you and what makes you feel more enriched and proud, because India is a vast country. It has multicultural growth and it has given us so much of divergent aspects of our cultural heritage that I think we are the only country that has that much of wealth. And I think you need to imbibe all that so that you are able to give a very cohesive and comprehensive answer to your interview. One very important aspect that you have to know, suppose you are asked a question that why is it that today's youth is not so connected with culture? Is it really so? And if so, why? And I think if we introspect, we will realize something very critical that you may have seen nowadays. Till about almost a decade or so back, we were so concentrated only in our textbooks. Whatever was taught into that limited textbooks, we knew about it. But we knew very little because few of us were actually, unless your father has a traveling job and you're traveling all over, you do get to know other places. But we were not so connected with culture. Why we were not connected? Because we were too busy trying to do our studies, or the father and mother were too busy with their jobs. And for some reason, the influence of Western civilization has been so much on us that our own roots and our own culture was in a way not really being promoted that much, because we felt that it's very important to know what's happening in the world without knowing what's happening in our own house. But in the last decade or so, what I have noticed that the social media is so active, and there are pockets and there are people who suddenly have woken up to the knowledge of India. And that, I think, in recent years, that today's youth is getting reconnected with our cultural heritage. It is coming to us in clips. It is coming to us in little, forms of WhatsApp messages or little videos. But yes, we are getting to know, but are we really connected? That is something that is depending on us individuals. And I think our youth must get connected to cultural heritage, because if you are not connected to your past, you have no future. And to be connected to the past means to be connected to your history and heritage and culture. That is our past. Our past is not who lived what and what they earned. It is what they left behind. And what they left behind is the culture and the history and the heritage. And so today's youth needs to reconnect. They are trying. But I think it is very important that we also try and see that how we can reconnect with culture. And we are so lucky that the IT revolution is such a boon that we actually, sitting at home, in the tips of a finger, we can know so much. So much we can know about the world and about our nation. And so I think reconnecting with culture is significant for us, so that we can contribute better in a more, I would use the word, cultured way to our whatever job we are doing. If we do it in a cultured way, the way we are meant to do, our efficiency will be better than if we are just doing it like a mechanical person. In the same context, I would like to enlighten you to something very important. I think we need to know, and you all need to know, so that in case anybody asks you a question like that, what is the influence of Western civilization on our lack of knowledge of culture? We all know about the Macular theory. Now, almost 200 plus years ago, when the Western civilization came, they realized and they studied and they saw that how in-depth Indians were rooted in cultural upbringing. Their family life, their social life, even their business life was so much rooted in culture, that the belief, the trust, the way they did things, But they realized that in order to rule India, we need to actually break the cultural fabric of India. And that was one of the reasons that they wanted to have two types of people here. They wanted to have the white collar jobs and the blue collar jobs. Now, that was a very, very strategic decision, so that people will be only getting money minded. And because they had come with a purpose to rule India, and to rule India, they need people who would do their bidding. And to do their bidding, they needed these two categories of people. Obviously, they had to break the cultural links. So that is one of the reasons that our education system started getting so focused on certain categories of things that we actually were disconnected with our cultural heritage. So in our textbooks also, we know very little, it's like a cursory knowledge about our past or about heritage, just a few lines here and there, So we do not blame people, we do not blame the new generation or the previous generation for having so much of lack of knowledge, because our mind is like a computer. Whatever is there in the computer, we will know. So if we are not given that knowledge in the computer of our mind, how will we know about it? And this is what happened through the almost 200 plus years, that we were in a systematic way disconnected, because we were too busy making ends meet and going by the way the people who are managing the country manage even our education. And so since the education was managed in a particular way, we were not given so much of knowledge about our cultural heritage. But gradually, I think We are, after independence, things have changed. Such new institutions have come up. We have the Indira Gandhi National Center of Arts. We have so many museums, so many organizations that are there for us to actually visit and know about it, that yes, today we need to come back to it. And we need to shed this coat that we have worn of Western perspective on Indian culture. We need to reconnect with our own way of knowing what our own culture is. And this will connect us not only to our family and our country, but it will help us to give a better output to our work that we are doing, because we will be interacting even today. It was only maybe 20 to 30% of the population that got influenced by the Western concept. But the majority of the grassroots people are still in the deep culture. And we have to, as civil servants, connect with that society. We as civil servants have to interact and do better for those people. And if we sort of shed this colonial garb of cultural knowledge and try to wear the real coat of our cultural knowledge, we will be able to be more acceptable to interaction with these people. And I think we need to know all these little facts so that we are able to contribute in a better way to our country's growth. One very important part of our knowledge has been that we know the history that has been taught to us. Whatever historians have written about it, we know about that. I'm going to give you a very interesting example here. Post-independence, there was a very famous historian called Ramesh Chandra Mazumdar. He was the tallest historian of that era, and he put up a proposal that now that the colonists are out from our country, let us write the history the way we want to write it. And a big proposal and a committee was made, and he was made in charge. But for some weird reason, that committee was dropped, R.C. Mazumdar was dropped, and another person by the name of Tara Chand was invited to write the history of India. So I know it will be very surprising for you to know that there are two books of the same name published at the same time. One is called The History of the Freedom Struggle of India. The other is also called The History of the Freedom Movement of India. Both are called Freedom Movement of India. One by R.C. Mazumdar, it is in 3 volumes, and one by Tara Chandji. Both these books have a very different perspective of the freedom movement of India. But what was incorporated in our textbooks, in our curricula, was the Tara Chand version of the history of the freedom movement of India. So majority of us who have in the last, say, almost 50 years studied the history of India know the history of India from one perspective. So history is what has been taught in the school, but there is a history which may have not been taught, but it was there. So it is incumbent for us as progressive people, progressive civil servants, progressive citizens of the nation to also know the history that may not have been written. For instance, even the history of the from 1192 when Prithviraj Chauhan came. And that was Prithviraj Chauhan fought many battles, and it was only in 1192 that almost the 11th battle that he lost. But nobody talks about the ones he won. Only we know about the ones he lost. Likewise, between Ghori and Ghazni, 150 years of India's, India fought back invasions, but we don't know about it. So history is what is written about and what is taught in schools, but there is also a history that may not have been taught in school, but it is already documented in other places. So it is important that we upgrade our historical knowledge and keep a wider vision that history is not only what is written in books, but history is also something beyond books that is there in society which we are not aware of, and it is incumbent on us to know. So there is a history of the social movement, there is a history of how different narratives got created, the history of how women's issues developed. There was a time when women were I mean, in ancient times, in Vedic times, women were scholars, women were priests, women were everything. But we came to know of a history that in India, women were always suppressed. But women were suppressed in the last 1,000 years. So we know the history, what has been taught in schools, but as future civil servants, it is incumbent on us to know the history which is actually there beyond the textbooks. So yes, history is what is taught, but as we said, history is also what may not have been taught but is still existing. And we must learn about that so that we can take a wider and better perspective of our society, make it a progressive society, make it an inclusive society. So our disconnect with culture had been for quite some time a lot, but in recent terms, as I have just said, the social media and today's world is making us reconnect with our intangible culture. So culture has two aspects. There's a tangible culture. That is something which we can see and feel, that is places, that are monuments, that our paintings, our sculptures, etc. Those are tangible pieces. But there is this very big component of Indian culture, and that is the intangible culture. And India's strength has been that intangible culture. And in intangible culture, when we are talking about that, we are talking about our yoga, we are talking about our meditation, we are talking about our music. These are things that have come back in a big way, and the whole world is recognizing. Even NASA is recognizing. They make astronomers go through the meditation process. The whole world is now understanding, and see, with the effort, the recognition that the world was actually imbibing this yoga and meditation, it has now, in a way, got the United Nations to declare an International Yoga Day. It happened a few years back, and today we have international yoga festivals. And that is the strength of India. India's strength is the intangible culture also. And through ages, India's actually knowledge has percolated through smriti and oral traditions. And those are also intangible culture. For years and years, thousands of years, we never had written books. It is only much later that the books started being writing. But it continued as intangible culture, and that intangible culture gradually got recognition all over the world. And today, even the importance of Gayatri Mantra to develop your brain's memory power and capacity power has been recognized by a 20-year research at AIIMS. The AIIMS doctors did research on a focus, people who were doing this Gayatri Mantra, and they found that after a certain period of time, the Gayatri Mantra actually helps you to not only increase the memory space of your brain, but the capacity of your brain and the processing speed of your brain. So now this computer has made us realize what is the processing speed, what is the capacity of your hard disk. Your hard disk is your brain. And this is the wealth of Indian culture. This is the wealth of intangible Indian culture, that we are able to understand now the importance of these exercises like yoga and meditation. India's strength has been its oral traditions, its smriti and shruti. All knowledge has come to us through these two methods. And because these two methods had a very long survival time, because they knew how to develop their brain power. And because of that, today we are fortunate that so much of written literature has actually, that Shruti and Smriti has transformed into written literature, which is helping not only our nation, but it is helping the world. So whether it is our epics, whether it is our Puranas, whether it is our Rig Veda or all the four Vedas, okay, Vedavyas, when he got this huge Rig Veda translated into 4, actually it was because he realized, he says this very clearly, he realized that gradually there may come a time when people may not be able to have this Smriti and Shruti at the same time. So let us put them down in text. So he make them smaller so that people can remember better. So he divided them into 4. And so it is very important for us to recognize that wealth of Indian culture, and this is the wealth of Indian culture which has helped the world and made India the Vishwa Guru. And I think if we understand these basic things about India's culture, the roots of India's culture, we will be able to contribute better in doing whatever we are doing, taking along all these different aspects of the garden of our, multicolored flowers of Indian's culture. So when we're talking about certain questions coming to you on culture, obviously the way you talk, the way you behave, and the way you answer will also reflect your culture. In our tradition, it is said your whole personality reflects your culture. So a very important part of our culture is that we believe a lot in something called time management. In our Sanskriti, it is called Muhurat. That you know that this is the Muhurat and I have to be there on dot at that time at that Muhurat. So punctuality is a very important part of our culture. So we must be punctual. And how to speak. In our tradition, our culture says that when you're speaking to your elders, it's a different way. When you're speaking to your youngers, it is a different way. So today, when you come for your interview, you have to keep in mind that you're going to speak to your seniors. And when you're speaking to your seniors, that politeness in your voice is very important. The way you do namaskar, a little bow. You don't have to bow down like, as if, they are your, no, you have to just a little bow just to acknowledge. So we have this thing called namaskar. That means namo svikar. You accept me as I am. And when you come there, I think another very important part of your cultural reflection of your personality will be the way you are dressed. Neatness has always been a very integral part of India's culture. If you will remember your grandmother or even your father and mother telling you, unless you've had a bath, you will not get your breakfast. First go and have a bath. Be clean. Go wash your hands. Everything is a part of Indian culture. And of course, it is also a part of Western culture. For some reason, the way you walk in, the way you talk and your grooming, your neatness, all this is a part of your culture. And please ensure that all this reflects in the way you are dressed. One important thing you have to remember in your dress code. You don't necessarily have to wear a Western dress or an Indian dress. No matter what you wear, it should be making you comfortable. If you're comfortable in trousers, be in trousers. If you're comfortable in, women is comfortable in salwar kameez or a sari or a dress, let it be. But be comfortable. Don't try to wear a dress just to impress somebody and you're not able to carry that dress. So these are little tips, where I feel that our cultural heritage teaches us to be ourselves, to be yourself. And yourself is reflected in your knowledge. And your knowledge also means that you are confident enough of what you are wearing and confident of what you're saying, confidently walking in. So nervousness is ruled out if you are comfortable in what you're wearing. If you're not comfortable, then you're always fidgety. You're trying to be somebody you're not, Like some people, they cannot walk in high heels, but they will wear high heels and so they stumble. So I think that is a very important part. As aspirants to this interview, be comfortable, be in a position where you're not nervous. Obviously, it's your first interview. You might be feeling a little nervous, but that is okay. And never stare anybody. Be always polite. Look very softly. And when you become an IAS officer or an IPS officer, any category of civil service, please remember that we are there as servants of the nation. And when we are there as servants of the nation, we have to understand the nation as it is. So unless you have the cultural knowledge of your nation, what is the type of people, what are the categories of people, what are the type of languages, what are the type of different forms in which people earn their livelihood, even in the field of culture or agriculture. You see, agriculture is the oldest culture. It's a culture, but it's the oldest culture. And it is related to the fields, to the ground. So it's called agriculture. So I think as civil servants, as you are grooming yourself through this whole process, I think it is very important that you understand how to deal with people of different categories in the way, in the language. I would not say typical language in the sense that you don't have to know all the languages, but your body language, your whatever communication you're doing, it should be understood by the other, so that unless they understand your communication, they're not going to give you a feedback. And unless you have the right feedback, you're not able to formulate your policies. So as the first person, you will be in the field. You will be in some subdivision, in the area where there is sort of, absolutely grassroots level people. So unless you are able to be at comfort with those type of people, you will not be able to understand the needs of those people and do something. Because to be successful, you have to do what is needed there, not what you want you to do there. You can want to do something unless you have got the experience. So once you have acquired experience from different levels of growth, then you can say, yes, I know, I have studied that place, I've studied those people, I've interacted with them, I know this is the need. But initial phases, it is you who have to go as a learner there. And our culture tells us we are learners all through our life. Knowledge is something that is never ending. Even the highest of scholars are learning every day, not only through books, but our experiences. And our experiences comes from interacting with people, interacting with situations, how to handle those situations. All these things form a part of our cultural knowledge. So culture is not only limited to either art or dance and drama or to some physical site. Culture is also the way we develop our whole system of work. So the culture of work style has to be developed by you by interacting with people and situations, and this will happen if you are a learner of the society, if you are able to be comfortable in understanding society. So first understand and then try to teach. So that is the whole thing. I think it's very important for us to, as aspirants and as future civil servants, to be able to understand.